No one lies on their deathbed and says, I wish I was more productive. But maybe they should, because productivity is making progress towards our priorities, towards the things that actually matter. That's the definition shared by Sarah Ohanesian, today's guest on the DesuckifyWork Podcast. At work, that might mean doing something we're passionate about or finding meaning where none seems to exist. Outside of work, with our families, our friends, or off on our own, it simply means spending more time doing what we love. I think Sarah's onto something here. Sarah is a former CMO turned productivity consultant. She saw and experienced the rampant burnout in the marketing world and decided she wanted to play a different game. We all need to figure out what game we're playing. If you work for a company, you need to get clear on what game they're playing and decide if you're on board. If you're a leader, get really clear on your game and bring in diverse teams who want to play it with you. No matter who you are, block your time for the stuff that matters. That's your real work. Create conversations with your team, your boss, your peers, and your clients to make sure everyone recognizes the importance of focusing on priorities. If priorities aren't clear, and this is just me talking, run. Life is too short to kill ourselves doing dumb shit for no apparent reason. Ultimately, all of this needs to come back to the game we want to play. The game we'll be happiest looking back and saying, yeah, that was worth it. That was fun. That was me. Let the desuckifying begin. Here's Sarah. Okay, Sarah Ohanesian, welcome to the DesuckifyWork Podcast.
Thanks for having me, TJ.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Before we go too deep into anything, I want to give you a chance just to introduce yourself. Tell us a bit about what you do and how you came to be doing it.
Sure. My name is Sarah Ohanesian, and I always chuckle because the number one question I get is, how do you say your last name? And I always tell people, don't worry about it. We've got so much stress in the world that don't let my last name be that thing that stresses you out. So you can always call me Sarah O. But it's an Armenian last name that sounds Irish, but whatever comes out is fine with me. So Sarah O works.
Awesome.
How did I get to this point? I was a chief marketing officer, having a great career, but I saw stress, burnout, disengagement, just nearly with everyone I talked to. So I would say, how are you? I'm busy. I'm so stressed out. I'm so overwhelmed. And that was the answer I was just getting from everyone. And I've always been a student of productivity. I've loved productivity. And I thought, I think this is something that I can help people with, So it was time for me. I had been in a great career for 15 years, and I thought it's just time for something different. And I transitioned to becoming a productivity consultant and now a keynote speaker and a corporate trainer. And for me, it's all about impact. And it's about how can I help people be more impactful so that they can leave work at a reasonable time, hopefully desuckify work. Leave at a reasonable time and have time for the things that they love. So it was a hard career pivot and transition for me, but one I'm just really grateful to have been able to do.
No, that's great. And what are some of the things you do to support people in their effort to be less overwhelmed?
Yeah, well, one of the things, TJ, which is maybe not what you would first think, is I feel like I give people permission. And I was speaking with someone yesterday and asking this, what do you do? And I said, at the end of the day, I think there's so many people looking for someone to tell them it's okay. You can do that. You can make a different choice. You can be in control of your day. You can say no to something without feeling guilty or terrible about it. So one of the through lines that I kept seeing in my work is that I want to work with motivated people who want to make a change, who believe they can make a change. But I think one of the things I really do at the end of the day is I give people permission to do something different and to be a different version of themselves when they need to be.
Yeah, it's remarkable how that hits, right? Because part of me is like, well, why do we not feel like we already have that permission?
I know.
Like, what is it about the way we work, the way society is, whatever is kind of informing us that has us feel like we don't have a choice?
I know.
Yeah. I mean, what did you notice? I mean, you mentioned as a CMO, and I come from the advertising world, so I kind of get that world of CMOs, certainly worked with quite a few over the years. Like, so surely you were feeling some of that in that space, right?
Oh, yes.
What flipped the switch for you that said, I actually have a choice here?
Yeah, I think we get trapped essentially. And so I talk a lot about what I call a busyness trap that people fall into. But I think there's many traps that we get stuck in. And our ability to think we have permission to get out of it or do something differently or to say no to someone, that's a hard trap to get out of. And it's not like it happened in one day. This happens over time. So the stories we've been told throughout our life, the way that we were raised, where we were raised, our perhaps religious or cultural upbringings, all of those things play a role in now as adults, we think I'm allowed to do that. I am or I am not allowed to do something or act in a certain way. And I think it just comes from years of us being told, this is the box you fit in. Stay in the box. Do what you're told. Be wonderful. Say yes to everyone. Be a people pleaser, perhaps. Yeah. And I think it comes from just years and years of over time, we've been put in these boxes. And as adults, we don't have a lot of opportunities to say, hang on a second. I could do something different here. I could make a different choice. And I want to be clear. That doesn't mean it has to be this life-changing thing. I mean, I had a hard pivot in my career. That's a big decision. It could be as simple as, you know what I'm going to do at 2:00 today? I'm going to do something different than what everybody thinks I'm going to do. It could be as simple as an hour choosing to do something for yourself. So I think it comes from years and years and years. But I hope that one of the things I can do for people, and I know I'm succeeding at it because this is the feedback I get from people, is you gave me permission today.
Yeah, it's really, I appreciate the insight that it doesn't have to be some grand move, because I think it can feel like that. Even the small moves might feel kind of big, right? But at least telling myself I want to do something different at 2 p.m. feels like, even if it feels big, I might be like, well, I'm going to try it, you know? And then if it leads to something more, great. If you ultimately realize like wherever you are isn't right for you, great. But it's also like redefining where you are is what I'm hearing. It's like, I can change this experience. And, you know, it's funny because I think about my own journey, and I'm sure others too are thinking this, like you kind of like, you're in the school world where it's kind of like, you're just kind of caught up in always having things to do. Right. And then like you get your first job, and like, not only are a lot of jobs set up where it's just give you stuff to do, but you're entering with the mindset of like, people tell me to do things and I need to believe that what they're saying is true. And therefore that's what I have to do. And even when you wake up one day and you're 30, 40, 50 years old and you're still in that trap, it's like, you just never had a chance to just sort of step out of the thing. I mean,
the hamster wheel. Yeah. I'll give you hopefully this can be one key takeaways for people from today. One of the concepts I've come up with is this idea of having ideas versus actions. So what I mean by that is throughout the course of the day, you're given things to do. Someone sends you an email, someone sends you a message on Teams or Slack, someone asks a favor, you're just piling up all those things that you could do. And a lot of times what we do is we put them on our to-do list without questioning. We just say, someone asked me to do something, I guess I'll do it, to your point. And what I'm finding is that's leading to very, very large to-do lists. And so instead, part of the permission I give people is to take that pause real quick and say, hang on a second, is this thing an idea? Something that maybe I'll do later. Maybe I won't do it. Maybe it's a suggestion. Saving that for later, putting that essentially on an idea list and separating out the things we're actually going to take action on. And when we do that, separating ideas from actions, the to-do list instantly becomes shorter. But I think the piece of the puzzle that's missing is your point. Well, we just all day, every day, people tell us what to do and we think I got to do it.
Yeah. And like, I'm sure some folks are listening and wondering like, yeah, but I really have to do those things. Like, and there are instances where I can think, well, there were times where it felt like I really had to do those things. And what tools or what ideas do you give people to help one start to separate like the ideas from the actual must do's? And then like is part of this also like, how do you have conversations around like what you actually need to do with the people who are also sort of feeding you all of this stuff to do? Yeah. I mean, at some point, do you get to kind of tell people like, I'm coming at this differently?
Yeah. And I believe that oftentimes that feels bad. Yeah. It feels like I'm a bad person. If you ask me to do something, especially if we work together and I say no, or later, I'm a bad person. And that's, again, a piece that I want to give people permission on. It's really about, I'm not saying no. I'm just saying, can we collaborate so that I can get a sense of when do you really need this thing? What piece of this do you really need from me? And then from there, I can make a more conscious decision to say, yes, I have the bandwidth to help you now. We can push that for later, or we can save that for a different time, or maybe someone else on the team can help us with that as well. It's just a conversation at that point rather than me saying no.
And what I also wonder, like, are there multiple sort of prongs to this effort? Meaning like, you know, if I'm not at the top of the organization, what you're describing feels like, oh, those are things I could start to do, have conversations with people I'm working with, maybe even have a conversation with my direct, you know, boss and kind of go like, how do we navigate the must-dos from the things that are ideas? But then there's the sort of more transformational at a cultural level idea. And then I think, okay, do you talk with CEOs and folks at the top around like, you're actually doing yourself a disservice when you have a culture that is just filled with people constantly piling on each other, as opposed to figuring out what's really important? And how do you frame those conversations with those folks, and what tends to get them to open their eyes and go, you might be onto something?
Part of it that I have seen is very eye-opening for people is we never even thought of that. So I had a CEO say to me once, he goes, you know, this has been great. Like working with you has been great. And we learned some tips and tactical takeaway, you know, all that's been great. He goes, but I think one of the most valuable things is we're actually thinking about how we manage our time and our work and our priorities. We never really took the time to think about it before.
That makes me slightly sad, but like I believe it because like I think we've all been in it. I mean, you come from the world of marketing, and I'm an advertising agency person. I mean, there's so much of that in that space where it's very task oriented. The next project, the next campaign, the next whatever. It's like there's so much of like more, right? And not much time really to step back and go like, what of this is actually doing what we say at a high level we want to do, and why we're almost just on autopilot. We're on
autopilot. We're saying yes to everything. We're saying the client wants us. The client says jump. We say how high. And again, the pushback I get, because you asked about that, is I don't want to say no. I don't want to be a bad person or a mean person. And I think the flip of that is you're going to be the most wonderful person to work with. If you deliver an amazing, let's stick with, you know, advertising and marketing for a while. If you deliver an amazing campaign that had your full attention and your full creativity towards it, I think the client is most of the time going to be more happy with that than we rushed through this. I worked on it at 10 p.m. when my brain wasn't as sharp, just for the sake of the deadline and getting it done. And I will recognize the fact that that's a hard shift for people. We live in a deadline-oriented world, and this opportunity to say, hang on a second, I could actually deliver you something better if I had 2 more days to do it. Would that be okay with you? And opening up that conversation, that changes the game.
How do you, when you were a CMO, did you have those conversations, and how did they come about? And were there ever moments where you were like, I'm surprised that somebody's even asking me this, or it feels weird that they're asking me this? I mean, how did this all sort of evolve for you in that space?
Yeah, well, these conversations are never fun, and it can feel awkward. And I think like, let's just take the elephant out of the room here, because it's really important to know that this can feel like you're doing something wrong. But for the most part, oftentimes someone says to us, can we meet at 2:00 on Wednesday? And we just say yes. But in our gut, we look at that meeting time and we think, that's not the best time for me, but I don't want to say no.
Yeah.
And so it's just this reframing of asking the other person kindly, would it be okay if we met on Thursday instead? Because that would be a better time for me. Most of the time, the people that I am blessed to work with, most of the time, it's like, yeah, no big deal. We could even meet next week if it's better for you.
Yeah.
But I think more often than not, what I was seeing was we're not even having the conversation. Someone's asking us to do something and we're just automatically saying yes. And so that's getting us into this trap and this cycle of, I've said yes to too many things. My schedule's overwhelmed. People are just booking time on my calendar, and it's taking you out of a position of control. To me, that's the fastest way I've seen burnout set in and overwhelm set in for myself, certainly over the years, and for my clients. And so it's really just get yourself back in control. And again, you don't have to be a mean person. You're just saying, TJ, would it be okay if we did it like this? And a lot of times that just opens up a conversation. And you might say, no, it's not. We've got to meet Wednesday at 2:00. Okay. But then at least I'm making a conscious choice to say, okay, I'm going to do that to help you then. And I feel better about it. So to me, this is all really a reframing exercise. Yeah. And again, giving people permission to say there's more that you can control here than you think. And I know that can be like, oh, we don't want to hear that. But that's a shift for people I have to work hard on.
Yeah, I think, and this may be true in most industries, but certainly in advertising and marketing, there's a little bit of a fear-based kind of a culture that happens, and sometimes a weird fear-based dynamic between agency and client. It's like, part of me goes like, it's almost like you're reliving like second grade in your head. It's like where you can't tell the teacher, aka the client now, that I want something, that I don't necessarily just automatically absorb what you say and just do it. But meanwhile, we're 30, 40, 50 years old and we're like, we certainly could. But it's hard, right? Because it's so emotionally baked in us. So I get it. It's like to even acknowledge that I might have some control there feels like my body's not telling me that.
Oh, I know.
So like, okay, so I need to maybe I need to baby step it by trying some internal conversations first and getting some comfort with that. And then maybe my boss, and then maybe, okay, now I'm going to start bringing this to the client, like you said, in a kind way. And like you said, they may say, I really need it to be this date, but even like just the awareness, one, that you've asked. And so you're starting to maybe shift the dynamic, but also like you've at least had a chance to say, that's not an ideal time for me. And so that they can recognize that you're putting forth some effort to accommodate them as opposed to just this automatic thing that we're in.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I hope that's what people can take away from this. It's just about having conversations. And more often than not, people want to help you too.
Yeah.
As much as you want to help people, they want to help you too. So it's often about a compromise. And I love what you said there, which is what I teach all day, every day, is baby step it in.
Yeah.
When I work with high achievers, and I know you do too, we have this all or nothing mentality. It's like, well, I need to control all of my schedule, and I need a whole system and a whole new way of working. No. That's probably not going to work.
Yeah.
Instead, we keep mentioning 2:00, so we'll stick with that. If at 2:00 today, you just make a different decision, you just choose to do something that really is impactful for you, one little moment at a time. I call this the compounding productivity effect. Because what happens is it creates a snowball. Yeah. And so we're not going to try to control, the whole week, the whole month, but just control a little bit at a time. And over time, you're going to start to see bigger and bigger results from that. So it's really about micro moments, baby steps, and again, giving yourself some permission to do that.
Yeah. I mean, it reminds me, one of the things I started doing probably later in my agency career was literally just blocking certain time windows for just me to have some time to think, or like time for me to go for a walk. And one, it's remarkable how just doing that, like a lot of times people just simply respected that. And then if somebody said, hey, can you move that? Like I had the choice of either saying like, yeah, I could probably move that. Or sometimes going, no, I can't. So what else works? And like creating some boundaries for yourself. Like, I think it showed me, I'm like, oh, I actually do have a little more control over this. You know, it doesn't, like you said, it's not a giant overhaul, but it's just giving yourself some time back and really holding yourself to that and realizing that's the thing. You're holding yourself to it. Yeah.
Well, and to piggyback on that concept, the other thing I teach clients is to have time on your schedule for yourself, which means a big project you're working on, a task you want to get through. It could be, just a mental break. You want to go for a walk in the middle of the day. But those moments that you're working on something, you're doing something that matters to you, that feels impactful to you, that's also, I mean, you would think I'm asking people to go to the moon. It's like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
You are allowed to put a time block on your calendar that is a meeting with yourself to get something impactful done.
Yeah.
And again, that is a concept that's very hard for people because it feels selfish. It feels like we're doing something wrong. It feels like, oh, well, someone else might want that time with me. And I'm thinking you deserve that time with yourself. Yeah. Because what I'm finding is most busy professionals that I work with, and most of my clients are in like bigger corporate settings. They work for someone else.
Yeah.
They're in meetings all day. Like literally all day, not even eating an ounce of lunch. And then in the evening time, that's when they start their work. That's when they're working and doing the actual task. And they're drained. They're completely burned out. And for some of them, they're like, once the kids go to bed, that's when I hop back on. I start doing it then. Yeah. And so we're really kind of burning the candle at both ends. So I'm like, put a meeting on the calendar with yourself. And it's like, I could never. It's crazy. So it's that alone can be a game changer for people.
Yeah. And I think like one, giving people permission to just take that step. I mean, I think of it as the old kind of ask for forgiveness, not permission kind of mentality. I think we need to take that a little bit sometimes. Like ultimately, if somebody comes around, if your boss or somebody says like, you can't be doing that, well, then you start to realize there's maybe a bigger issue. If it's like, I notice you're blocking time for yourself. I don't like that. I don't know how often that would happen, but it could. Then you might be in a position of like, I'm not sure about this environment. But then it also goes up to the top of the chain then around building the culture, which my brain goes to, if I'm a CEO and I want people to really focus on their work and really focus on what matters, I want to create an expectation that you should be putting time on your calendar. And maybe there's even a certain amount of time you should be putting on your calendar and a certain amount of time that's allowed for meetings every day. And, whether that's a 50-50 split or whatever you decide on, so that you are sort of setting the standard and setting the tone that like to do great work here means, yes, sometimes we have to meet together and have to collaborate together. But if you don't have time to do your thinking time and you're getting through some of your big project time, the stuff we're really paying you hundreds of thousands of dollars for potentially, then what are we doing? And then if you're having to squeeze it in at 10 o'clock after the kids are in bed and finally you have a quiet couple of hours, like what is the quality of that work?
That's it.
Right?
That's it. Right.
Crazy.
So the other thing I would strongly consider is thinking about with your team, when do you all work the best? So some of my clients that have been most successful at this, they've actually been able to have like meeting time and non-meeting time. So that would be a block of, we're always going to meet on Tuesdays. That's our meeting day. Tuesdays are kind of what we don't get a lot of work done on Tuesdays, but we get all our meetings out of the way. Wednesdays then are more of an open time where we've actually got time to work and we're blocking that time on our calendar to do the work. Yeah. So that's one way to do it. Another way that can be really, really effective for people is to think about when are you at your best? Because, TJ, it's not all day, every day that you're at your best, I'm assuming.
Fair enough.
For most of people, there's 3-4 hours of a day that we are really good. We are really on. What I hear from a lot of people is first thing in the morning. I'm great. First thing in the morning. That's when my energy's highest. I feel most alert. I feel like I can really do some impactful work. What do they do at that time? Check email, check Slack. Do everything everybody else asks for them. So my encouragement to people is think about when you're your best and don't fake it. For years, I thought oh, I'm a morning person, because that's what successful people do. I read this in a book. Morning people are the successful people. For years, I was trying to be a morning person. No, I'm great right now. In the afternoon, that's when I'm at my best.
Yeah, same.
But knowing that shifts for me. So in the morning, I get I'm drinking my coffee. I'm getting some of the low level tasks out of the way.
Yeah.
When I'm doing impactful, big work, it's happening in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So my encouragement for people is to think about, when you schedule this time, are you scheduling it when you're foggy, you haven't had your coffee, you're not at your best?
Mm-hmm.
I would flip it and say, do the low impact work then, but really, kind of hold this time sacred and think about intuitively, when are you at your best? And that's the time to get that most impactful work done.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And that sort of narrative around morning people is one I've always battled with, because I'm not a morning person. And I've kind of always known that, but I've kind of always been like, all right, I guess I just got to show up and sort of fake it like I am a morning person.
That's what successful people do.
Yeah, but it's like, okay, have those conversations and know your team, and know and find your compromises on when you try to meet and when you don't, and try to give people room to work when they can. I think all of that makes a ton of sense. And like you said, it's weird that it feels like we're doing something bad by just having honest conversations with each other and asking for some things to help us work better. I want to come to the word productivity, because it's an interesting word, right? As a creative, I can bristle at the word productivity a little bit, because I'm like, yeah, that just feels like I'm churning out stuff as opposed to really engaging with my creativity. So how do you define productivity? And then what helps people move from the busyness to it? What maybe it's even just a mindset shift. What helps them see the distinction?
So my definition of productivity is progress towards the priorities.
Okay.
And again, you have to define that for you. Is progress towards your priorities in a creative space, like I came up with a campaign for a client, or I'm in manufacturing and it's this many widgets per hour. So obviously it's different for everyone. But the feeling of productivity is more about what I'm trying to tap into here. Because when we're feeling burned out, overwhelmed, stressed, when I look back in my own life, when I'm speaking with clients, the things that are coming up, they might burn those people out, but they wouldn't burn a different person out. So it's not so much about the activity or how many hours you're working. You could work 3 hours a week and be completely burned out. You can work 70 and not be burned out.
Right.
So to me, it's all talked about like that mindset shift. It's all about, are we going towards burnout because we're working on things that we don't like, we're not good at, they're not in our zone of genius, we're forcing a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah.
We're not making progress towards priorities. Or are we working towards those things that feel impactful, that feel meaningful, that feel like priorities for ourselves and for the organizations that we work for? That's the shift that gets us to productivity.
I like that definition. And then it sort of begs the question, and one that I don't think is answered often in a lot of organizations, which is, what is the actual priority, right? I mean, even within advertising, there can be sort of an assumption, certainly from folks who work on the creative team, well, that it's to do great work. And yet the way things may flow through the organization, it's like, well, we're not really set up to do great work. So is it actually the priority? And has anybody actually stood up and said that it is in fact the priority to do great work? Because it may actually and really own what that means. Like, okay, we need to set you up for success to do great creative work. Or is it more like, I want you to do good creative work, but I also want us to do a certain volume of it because that's how we're profitable. And that would be probably deflating for a lot of people from my side of the world, which to be creative, but there's also something really honest about it that says this is how we operate as a business. There are going to be maybe some moments where we're going to spike on the creativity, but day to day, actually, we need to get out good work that kind of meets this ongoing high-paced need of the client. And then people can choose whether they want to be a part of that.
Yes.
But I don't see that super often, but sometimes I almost wish I would. It's then I can really know, because then it's oh, this work that felt pointless, it's actually, no, this is the work.
Well, I love that you're recognizing this, because I feel like this is what I talk about all the time.
Yeah.
The clarity around what are we doing and why does it matter, to me, is 90% of the productivity equation. So often we're stuck just churning it out. We're kind of stuck in the weeds of our work. Do the next thing. Someone asked me to do this. I'm going to do it. And so that moment again to pause and say, okay, what is it? Define what productivity is. Define what success is on this project. Define what my role in this project should be.
Yeah.
When we know that, when we've got clarity on what those metrics are, like what are we even measuring in the first place here?
Yeah.
That changes everything, because now as a company, we can perform differently. And certainly as an individual contributor, we can as well.
Yeah.
If my job is to churn out as much content as possible, that is a very different thing than we're trying to win an award for advertising here.
Yeah.
Let's come up with the most creative thing that we can. This is two different ball games. And I think a lot of times leaders are playing a different ball game than the people on their team, because they haven't talked about it. And so at this point, it's fine. We can play this game or that game. It matters, but we need to be clear on what game we're playing in the first place. And I think that's where I see a big disconnect.
I think it may be that certainly in the agency world that I come from, there's a certain fear there, right? If I tell people our business model is actually built around creating good work, but it's a lot of content we need to create and we need to get it out fast. And it may not always be award winning. There may be a fear that really deflates the team. So you have to kind of hold this carrot out of like, oh, there's the aim for the stars and all that stuff. But like what I notice in that is, it would be deflating maybe to hear that, but also like there's a big deflation that happens when I'm spending a year, 2, 3 years of my career thinking I'm going to get this great opportunity to do something amazing. And yet the way things actually line up is quick turnaround, banging out kind of projects where like, again, I might feel okay about it. But they're not that big opportunity. And the sort of betrayal of that is I think ultimately worse than if you had the honest conversation and gave me the choice to say, okay, I'll stay because I can be okay with that, or I'm not going to stay. And then other people might be,
Yeah. And I think you are exactly right. The fear is why we don't talk about it. But that's also what's causing people to be stressed out, burned out, overwhelmed, to potentially leave. That's why we're not desuckifying. That's why work sucks sometimes.
Yeah, it does.
Because we're working towards, again, back to what's the definition of productivity. We're making progress on something that like that's not in alignment with the direction that I want to go. I give an analogy often that if a plane leaves LAX and it's going to JFK and it's just 1 degree off course, it's going to be hundreds of miles away. When it's intended to land at JFK, it's going to be hundreds of miles away. It's way off course very quickly. That happens. And I think that happens at work a lot of times. In the interview process, we're like, yeah, sure, cool. Let's just get the job. Let's just get this person hired. Let's just get them in. And we haven't had some of these real honest conversations of this is the clarity on this role. This is our expectations of you. And this is how we're going to measure success here.
Yeah.
Is this a place for you or not? And I think more often than not, we're just not having those honest conversations. And some of that is gut, heart, feeling, being in alignment. And that doesn't mean that's not a woo-woo thing. Like every job is perfect. But there is some alignment that really, really matters to people because they got to know why that work matters.
Absolutely.
And mattering for the sake of let's churn out as much as we can. Let's be as profitable as we can. Let's make the work good enough. Cool.
Right. Yeah. If we're doing at this agency. If that's what works for you, that's great. Right. And I think because we're not having those conversations, I mean, the stats I've heard, at least generally speaking, is like 1/3 of agency talent turns over every year. I mean, it's a pretty remarkable thing. We wonder why that happens. And I think it's all about what you're talking about. People are feeling misaligned and not being able to actually contribute in the way they thought they would be able to contribute. So, I mean, all of what you're saying makes so much sense to me. And I think moving past the fear as leaders within these organizations, I think is the big key to start to have some of these conversations. I want to shift gears real quick. I want to at least touch on one thing that you also do, which is you focus on neurodivergence and all that. And there's actually one really interesting thing. You partner with Asana to sort of develop features that accommodate sort of various different ways of thinking. And I think about all of us have used some of these tools, whether we used Asana or Basecamp or whatever. We've all worked in these tools. And I think whether you like them or not often comes around to how well their particular model like reflects the world that you live in.
Yes.
Right. And
100%.
we all know like we're bringing people with diverse ways of thinking into spaces. So one, what's your take on how to make that experience better? And then two, like how did Asana accommodate that? Because it feels like these feel like plug and play kind of things. So how did they find a way to accommodate it?
Yeah, well, I must give Asana so much credit. So my business partner, Jeff Gibbard, and I, we are Asana certified partners. And what Asana has been tremendous about is saying, they meet with Jeff and I once a month and say, tell us what's going on. Tell us what you're hearing. What do customers need? And so for us to be able to bring that to the table has been tremendous, and they respond. So one of the things that a lot of these tools have is, like you said, it's very plug and play. This is how this tool looks. This is how this works. This is how you will use it. And a good amount of people say, no, thank you. I don't want to do that.
Exactly.
And so what Asana's done a wonderful job with is they actually came out with this, they're called views. And what that means is, do you want to see this as a long list? Do you want to see this as an agile board type of view, a Kanban style? Do you want to see this on a calendar? Do you want to see this in a timeline type of view? And so what Jeff and I are able to do is work with individuals within a team and say, okay, the organization needs to see work in a certain way. Yeah. How can we take that same list of work and turn it into something that works for your brain and for my brain and for the other teammates? And Asana has been really cool in a way that they have these different views that we can see the same data in different ways. And so what Jeff and I do is we work with teams to figure out, how does everybody on the team need to see this so that essentially everybody can have their cake and eat it too? And is that a lot of work? It is. It is. Does it take us some time to figure all that out? Yes. Yeah. Is it worth it because 1 year later, they're still using that same tool? 100%. Yeah. Is it changing how our clients are working? Yes. And for people to come back to us and say, I finally can see what I need. I can finally work the way that I want to work. I can finally manage work in a way that works well for me and my brain type. For us, that's like the reason we do this work.
I can imagine. And I think, the more people are focused on bringing in folks with, different ways of thinking and folks who are neurodivergent, you're setting yourself up nicely by giving people a chance, because otherwise it's like day one, somebody's going to be like, oh, what the heck is this?
Right. Here's how we're going to work. Manage this on this Excel spreadsheet, and it's color coded. And you're like, great, I hate Excel and I'm colorblind. So,
exactly. Okay. What are you doing to me? Right. That's like how I feel.
Really challenging.
When I've worked places that love Gantt charts, that's always been my kryptonite. I really can't stand them. But if you give it to me in a calendar format, I'm happy. So I love that you're doing that.
And for the next person or for the project manager, they might need to see that list of everything that's coming up in the next 30 days.
Absolutely. And
so that's the beauty of it. It's like, what do you need for the role you have, the way your brain works, how you want to see work in that moment, and the time you have to work on it right now. 20 minutes later, you could look at it in a totally different way, but it's the same volume of work. And so it's a really cool thing. And I think just cheers to Asana, because they have done exceptional. The last 18 months, they have done so many good updates and features to that tool that Jeff and I we can't say enough good things about it.
That's awesome. And I can see how that obviously connects back to making your organization more productive if people get to work the way they want to work. Yeah. So Sarah, I want to give you a chance. I've asked you a lot of questions, and I want to give you a chance to ask our audience a question. So what would you like the audience to answer? I
like to think about the next task that I'm picking off my list. I like to think about, what is the most impactful thing? What is the task that has the most potential, essentially? So my question for your audience is, when you're looking at your list next, what big impact do you want to make? What big impact are you capable of making? And what is that one task that's going to help to get you there?
It's a great question. It's one, it's a good reminder for me too, because I can be a little scattered sometimes. So to be able to really like zone in and zero in on like, what's the thing that really matters today, is a great reminder. So I know you've kind of answered this probably throughout this conversation, but maybe we can kind of tie it up in a bow a bit. If you could wave a magic wand and create a fully desuckified work world, what does that look like?
Oh my gosh. I feel like I would never hear the word burnout again.
I love that.
I joke. I would never really want this to happen because I love my work. I love what I get to be able to do. Yeah. But I almost wish there wasn't a need for this job.
Yeah, I get it.
If no one said I'm totally burned out, and again, burnout is it's now, according to the World Health Organization, it is a medical condition. It is an official medical condition. So this is no longer like I'm a little stressed, I'm a little overwhelmed. Like, this is serious now, and this is affecting our health.
Yeah.
I wish that we're desuckified enough that I never heard anybody say I'm burned out again.
I love that. I like the sound of that. It might put me out of a job as well, but but I think
we've done it.
It's a nice place to arrive at. And yeah, you could feel a certain like, yeah, we did it. Awesome.
We did it. Yeah. And unfortunately, I think we're really far away from that because that are getting worse and worse and worse. So good for TJ and I. We've got job security in this space, but I think we've got a lot of work to do. Those of us that do work in this space to help people.
100%. Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately. So want to have a little fun before we go. I ask a lot of people to do a sound effect on this show. You hear it. If you listen to my show, you'll hear cat sounds and other things. So I want to invite you to add a sound to our library, and it'll show up somewhere in the intro to our episode.
So fun. Well, I thought of opening my water bottle. So I hope that came through on my microphone there. But to me, I'm like, this sound of opening the water bottle is just always like, a moment, a pause, and just an opportunity to like drink in something good.
I like that. No, it's a good sound. There is something, it's almost like an immediate stress release when you open the water bottle. You know, you're just going to at least be taking a moment for yourself to kind of come back to that whole notion of like giving yourself some moments throughout the day. Well, Sarah, this has been such a fun conversation. I want to give people a chance to find you, discover all the great work you're doing, learn about where you're speaking, all that kind of stuff. So what's the best way for people to find you online?
Yeah, LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. So Sarah Ohanesian on LinkedIn. And then my website is so-productive.com.
Awesome. Well, I encourage everybody to check you out both on your site and find you on LinkedIn and connect and start learning more about what you do. Maybe invite you to speak at their organization if they're looking for a great speaker. This is obviously a relevant topic. Thank you so much, Sarah. This has been a ton of fun, and I'm excited to see how people respond to all of your wonderful insights.
Great. Thanks so much, TJ.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to the DesuckifyWork Podcast. And a huge thanks to Sarah for bringing a fresh perspective on productivity to the show. You can follow Sarah on LinkedIn and check out her site at so-productive.com, where she'll help you get clear on what matters. If you enjoyed the conversation and would like to dive deep into some of your own challenges at work, I invite you to schedule a free half-hour discovery session where we can explore new desuckified possibilities for your future. Bye, everyone.